Zira stepped off the spacecraft, her smooth, silver skin reflecting the bright sunlight of Earth. Her large, violet eyes blinked as she adjusted to the planet's atmosphere. The air was rich with oxygen, much thicker than on her home planet, Zalon 5. She had studied Earth's culture before arriving, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. As a high-ranking diplomat from the Galactic Alliance, Zira's mission was simple: observe human behavior and understand their way of life. Humans were a strange species, known across the stars for their unpredictability. Some alien civilizations admired them, while others feared them. Zira wasn't sure what to think yet. A human guide named Daniel greeted her with a warm smile. He was a tall man with short brown hair and an easygoing nature. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Zira," he said, extending his hand. Zira hesitated before shaking it. The human custom of physical touch still felt odd to her, but she reminded herself to be polite. "I am honored to be here," she said in her usual formal tone. Daniel grinned. "Great. We have a lot to show you. Humans have a very interesting way of life." Zira nodded, unaware of the shock that awaited her. Humans are jumping to their deaths. Daniel led Zira to an open field where a large group of humans had gathered. They stood near a strange-looking machine, which Zira quickly identified as an aircraft. She had studied human technology, so she wasn't surprised by it. What did confuse her, however, was what happened next. One by one, humans boarded the aircraft. Minutes later, Zira's sharp vision spotted the plane rising into the sky. She assumed it was a normal flight, until the doors suddenly opened midair. And then it happened. Humans started jumping out. Zira gasped, her forefingers tightening around the edges of her diplomatic robe. "Daniel," she said, her voice filled with alarm. "Your people they are falling from the sky." Daniel laughed. "Oh, that's just skydiving. It's a sport." Zira's mind raced. Sport. Her brain struggled to understand the logic behind it. On Zalon 5, safety was the foundation of their society. Everything was planned, controlled, and structured to avoid unnecessary risks. And yet, here on Earth, she was witnessing humans throwing themselves into the open sky. For fun. She watched in horror as another human leaped from the plane, their arms and legs flailing against the wind. Just when she thought it was over, a large piece of fabric burst open from their back, slowing their fall. Zira exhaled sharply. A parachute. Her heart rate steadied, but only slightly. Why would they do this? She demanded. Daniel shrugged. It's the thrill, the excitement, the rush of adrenaline. Humans love adventure. Zira frowned. This is reckless. What if the parachute fails? What if they crash to the ground? Daniel's smile didn't fade. That's the risk. That's why it's fun. They are laughing. Zira continued watching, expecting to see panic or regret on the humans' faces once they landed. But to her disbelief, they were smiling, laughing. They cheered for each other, exchanging high fives and hugs. One of them, a young woman with short blonde hair, walked over and grinned at Zira. You should try it, she said playfully. Zira took a step back. I would rather not. The woman chuckled. That's what I said before my first jump. But trust me, once you do it, you'll never want to stop. Zira couldn't believe what she was hearing. These people had jumped from the sky, barely survived, and instead of fear, they felt joy. Her mind struggled to process this information. On her planet, fear was a warning, a sign to avoid danger at all costs. But on Earth, fear seemed to be something humans sought out on purpose. For the first time, Zira felt something new, a mix of curiosity and unease. Were humans brave, or simply insane? The beginning of a new understanding. As the sun set over the horizon, Zira remained deep in thought. She had only been on Earth for a few hours, yet she had already witnessed something completely beyond her understanding. If skydiving was considered fun, What other terrifying activities did humans enjoy? A small shiver ran down Zaira's spine. She was about to find out. Zaira sat in silence, her mind replaying the events she had just witnessed. The humans had thrown themselves from the sky, laughing in the face of death, and they had enjoyed it. She had traveled across galaxies, met beings of all shapes and forms, but never had she encountered a species so obsessed with danger. Daniel, noticing the deep crease forming on Zaira's forehead, chuckled. "You're really struggling with this, huh?" Zaira turned to him sharply. "I fail to see how plummeting from the sky is considered entertainment. It defies all logic." Daniel smirked. "Well, that's just the beginning. If you think that was crazy, wait until you see what else we do for fun." A sudden sense of dread washed over Zaira. What other insane activities could these humans possibly engage in? She had a feeling she wasn't going to like the answer. The next day, Daniel took Zaira to another location, this time a vast body of water stretching as far as her enhanced vision could see. The deep blue waves crashed against the shore, their rhythmic motion oddly soothing. "This," Daniel gestured proudly, "is the ocean. And today, we're going surfing." Zaira's gaze snapped to him. "Surfing," she repeated cautiously. "Yep." Daniel pointed toward a group of humans riding on long flat boards as massive waves towered over them. Zaira's eyes widened as she watched the humans balance on the water, narrowly avoiding being swallowed whole by the roaring sea. Her fingers twitched. This was madness. They're willingly putting themselves in the path of potential destruction, she muttered. What if the wave consumes them? What if the force of the water is too strong? What if they... Daniel held up a hand. "Relax, Zaira. It's all part of the fun." Fun. Zaira nearly lost her composure. "Drowning is fun." Daniel laughed. "They don't drown. Well, most of them don't. Sure, sometimes people get wiped out, but that's just part of the experience." Zaira turned back to the surfers. One of them lost balance and plunged into the water. Zaira stiffened, waiting for the worst. But mere moments later, the human resurfaced, laughing as they swam back to their board. Zaira exhaled, exasperated. "Your species seems to deliberately flirt with death." Daniel only grinned. "We like the thrill. It makes us feel alive." Zaira shook her head. On her planet, caution and control were valued above all else. Yet here, humans seemed to seek out danger just for the sensation of survival. As she continued observing, she noticed something strange happening inside her. The initial shock had not worn off, but alongside it was something else, a creeping, foreign sensation that she couldn't quite name. Intrigue. She was starting to understand something about humans, something that both fascinated and terrified her. They did not just survive danger. They embraced it. And somehow, she had a feeling this was only the beginning. Zaira sat near the shoreline, watching the waves roll in as the last traces of daylight faded from the horizon. The humans had finally tired themselves out, packing up their boards and heading toward the bonfire they had built on the sand. But Zaira's mind was still racing. These creatures, these reckless beings, had no fear of nature's wrath. They challenged it, laughed in its face, and thrived in the chaos. She had spent her entire existence calculating risks, avoiding unnecessary dangers, and ensuring her survival through logic and caution. And yet they ran toward danger like it was an old friend. Daniel walked up beside her, shaking water from his hair before plopping down onto the sand. "All right, you survived day 2. Feeling any braver yet?" Zaira shot him a glare. "Bravery is not the word I would use." Daniel smirked. "Well, lucky for you, we're taking it easy tonight." Zaira arched a brow. "Somehow, I doubt that." Daniel only grinned as he motioned for her to follow. They joined the group around the fire, the flames crackling as humans passed around steaming mugs and shared stories. Laughter echoed through the night air. It was a scene so ordinary for them, yet so foreign to Zaira. Her people did not gather like this. They did not waste time with unnecessary conversation. Every interaction on her world served a purpose. This was chaotic, unstructured, unpredictable. And for reasons she could not explain, she felt drawn to it. A man across the fire suddenly clapped his hands together. "All right, who's up for some ghost stories?" Zara's brow furrowed. "Ghost stories." Daniel leaned closer. "It's a human tradition. We tell scary stories around a fire for fun." Zara blinked. "For fun." Daniel chuckled. "Yep, you'll love it." She highly doubted that. The first story was about a creature that lurked in the woods, preying on those who wandered too far. The next was about a ghostly figure that appeared in mirrors, watching from behind. Zara listened carefully, analyzing each tale. Her species had advanced beyond superstition long ago. They relied on facts, not stories designed to evoke fear. Yet, as the night went on, she noticed something peculiar. Her heart was pounding. She wasn't sure when it had started, perhaps during the story about the man who vanished without a trace, or maybe during the one where the monster could mimic human voices. The strange part, it wasn't unpleasant. There was a thrill to it, a strange excitement she had never encountered before. She glanced at the humans around her, their faces illuminated by the firelight, eyes wide with suspense. They weren't truly afraid. They were enjoying the feeling of fear, playing with it, as if it were just another part of their strange, reckless existence. Zara exhaled slowly. They didn't just seek out physical danger. They enjoyed fear itself. What kind of species was this? She had studied hundreds of civilizations, observed their ways, analyzed their cultures. But humans were something else entirely. And for the first time since she had arrived, she wondered, was she starting to understand them? The fire had burned low, glowing embers casting flickering shadows across the sand. The ghost stories had ended, but the lingering tension remained. Zara could feel it in the air. Humans, she had learned, seemed to enjoy the unease, the heightened alertness that fear brought them. They sought it out willingly. She still wasn't sure why. Daniel stretched his arms behind his head, grinning. "So, what did you think?" Zara kept her expression neutral. "They were illogical." Daniel laughed. "Yeah, but did they make your heart race a little?" Zara hesitated. It had. The stories, as absurd as they were, had stirred something in her. A reaction she couldn't quite explain. But she refused to admit it. "It was simply a biological response," she said instead. Daniel smirked. "Aha. Well, if you think that was something, just wait." Zara frowned. "Wait for what?" Daniel's grin widened. "We're going camping tomorrow." Zara tilted her head. "Camping? We go out into the wilderness, far from civilization, and spend the night under the stars." Zara blinked. "Intentionally." Daniel laughed. "Yeah, we disconnect from technology, enjoy nature, and—" He wiggled his fingers dramatically. "Test our survival instincts." Zara stiffened. "That is not entertaining." Daniel stood, brushing sand from his jeans. "You'll love it. It's another human classic." She had serious doubts about that. The next evening, they drove deep into the forest, far beyond the city limits. The trees stretched high above them, their thick canopies blotting out the sky. The deeper they went, the narrower the road became, until finally it disappeared entirely, leaving only a footpath winding into the woods. Zara stepped out of the vehicle, scanning the environment. It was too quiet. On her world, nature was controlled, regulated. The idea of leaving civilization behind to venture into unpredictable territory was unthinkable. And yet here they were. The group unpacked supplies, tents, sleeping bags, a small cooler filled with food. Zara observed carefully, but her mind was elsewhere. Her advanced hearing picked up subtle movements beyond the trees. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, the rhythmic beating of small, unseen creatures. Her instincts screamed at her, This is unsafe. This is foolish. Leave. Instead, she watched as Daniel set up the tent with practiced ease, whistling a tune as if they weren't voluntarily isolating themselves in a hostile environment. "How is this enjoyable?" Zyra finally asked. Daniel paused, adjusting one of the tent poles. "It's peaceful. It is dangerous." He shrugged. Not really. There might be some wildlife, but that's part of the adventure." Zyra narrowed her eyes. "So you are aware of the threats, and yet you choose to put yourselves in harm's way." Daniel smirked. "That's what makes it fun." Zyra exhaled sharply, shaking her head. It was always the same answer with them. Danger is fun. Fear is exciting. Risk is thrilling. How had their species survived this long? As the sun set, the temperature dropped, and the deep forest grew even darker. The fire crackled, offering the only source of warmth and light. Shadows danced across the trees, and Zyra could feel something shift in the air. Daniel nudged her. "You hear that?" Zyra focused. At first, there was nothing, just the hum of nocturnal creatures. But then, a sound. Faint, distant, a low guttural growl. Zyra shot to her feet instantly. Something is out there. The group chuckled. "Relax, it's probably just a raccoon." Zyra was unconvinced. She took a cautious step toward the darkness, her senses on high alert. Her species had long evolved past primal fear, but this prickle of awareness, it felt ancient, instinctual. Then, movement, a flash of something big shifting between the trees. Zyra stiffened. That was no raccoon. Daniel followed her gaze, squinting. "Okay, that did look kinda big." The group fell silent. For the first time since she had arrived, Zyra saw something rare, a flicker of uncertainty on their faces. Fear. Real fear. And for the first time, Zyra understood why humans chased it. Not for the danger, not for the chaos, but for the thrill of the unknown. The fire crackled between them, its warm glow barely pushing back the darkness that surrounded the campsite. The air was thick with tension, the group unusually quiet. Zyra sat rigid, her sharp senses tuned to every rustling leaf, every shift in the wind. Whatever was out there, it was still watching. She had seen fear flicker in the humans' eyes. For all their bravado, for all their claims of fun, they were not in control anymore. And that intrigued her. Daniel, normally the most relaxed of them all, kept glancing toward the trees, his usual cocky smirk replaced by something more serious. "Maybe it's just a deer," one of the others suggested, their voice lower than usual. Zyra shook her head. That was no herbivore. Daniel swallowed. "Okay. Then, what do we do?" Zyra turned to him, surprised. He was asking her. She had spent days marveling at their reckless behavior, their need to seek danger rather than avoid it. And yet now that danger had found them, they hesitated. For the first time, she felt superior. She was built for this. Without hesitation, she stood, scanning the tree line. The sounds were subtle, but she heard them. The deliberate shifting of weight, the controlled breathing of something large, predatory. And then, stillness. It knew it had been noticed. Zyra took a slow step forward, her muscles tense. Her species had long since evolved past physical violence, relying instead on intellect and strategy. But here, in this foreign world, she felt something primal stir within her. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Wait, what are you doing?" Zyra glanced down at his hand. "Taking control of the situation, something you seem unable to do." His grip loosened, and for the first time since they'd met, he looked at her differently. Like maybe, just maybe, he had misunderstood her species as much as she had misunderstood his. The fire popped loudly, sending a shower of embers into the air. The momentary burst of light illuminated the trees, and something moved. Something fast. Something big. Zyra's heart pounded. Then, without warning, a howl. Low, guttural, vibrating through the ground. Zera's fingers curled into fists. Daniel took a step back. That wasn't a deer, was it? Before anyone could answer, the bushes exploded in movement. A shadow rushed past the edge of the firelight, too quick to see clearly. The group scrambled backward, some grabbing makeshift weapons, a flashlight, a pocket knife, a half-empty water bottle. Useless. Zera took a deep breath. Fear was an illusion. Fear was a construct. And then, silence. A different kind of silence. One that told Zera they were not alone anymore. She turned slowly, her gaze locking onto the darkness just beyond the firelight. And then, from the shadows, eyes. Glowing, unblinking, watching. A cold chill spread through her veins. Daniel whispered, "Okay, now what?" Zera did not answer. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't know. A heartbeat passed, then another. The glowing eyes in the darkness did not blink, did not shift. They simply watched. Zera stood her ground, suppressing the instinctual shiver that crawled up her spine. Fear was foreign to her kind. Her people had evolved beyond it, priding themselves on logic, on control. But this was different. The humans tensed around her, their shallow breathing betraying the naked terror gripping them. Daniel's fingers twitched near his pocket, where his pathetic little knife rested. Useless. She had observed them long enough to know that fear fueled them. But this time, it held them captive. A sharp snap echoed through the trees. A branch crushed under something heavy. Zera narrowed her eyes. "It's circling." Daniel's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "You think?" His usual sarcasm was gone, replaced by something raw. Something uncertain. Zera had never seen him uncertain before. The fire flickered, casting jagged shadows that danced like restless specters. Another movement, closer this time. The presence in the dark was no longer watching. It was stalking. A primal thrill surged through Zera's veins. For the first time since arriving on this planet, she felt alive. This was not one of their ridiculous games. This was not some absurd human concept of fun. This was survival. She turned sharply to Daniel. "What is the protocol for threats in the wild?" He exhaled shakily, his eyes darting around. "Run." Zera stared at him. "Run. That's the usual human strategy," he admitted. "Unless we have a gun, which we don't. So yeah, running sounds like a solid plan." She shook her head. "Cowards." His jaw tensed. "Excuse me." Another snap. Closer. Zera's lips curled. "Running is what prey does." A guttural growl rumbled through the air, low and resonant. Daniel stiffened. Zera smirked. "Stay here if you want." She took a deliberate step forward, toward the dark. The humans gasped behind her. "Zera, what the hell are you doing?" Daniel hissed. She ignored him. Her instincts, her real instincts, the ones her kind had long since buried beneath reason and diplomacy, knew what to do. She could feel the weight of the predator's gaze, analyzing her, deciding if she was worth the effort. She made the choice for it. She lunged forward, straight into the darkness. A deafening snarl erupted as something massive rushed toward her. Zera moved without thinking, twisting to the side just as a hulking shape lunged through the firelight. The human screamed. The beast landed where she had been standing seconds ago, its claws raking deep into the earth, and for the first time, Zera saw it clearly. It was not of this world. Its skin was dark, almost metallic, shifting like liquid under the fire's glow. Its elongated limbs moved with eerie precision, as if calculating every motion to conserve maximum energy for the kill. But its eyes, its piercing, predatory eyes, held intelligence. This was no mindless creature. It knew exactly what it was doing. Daniel scrambled backward, dragging another human with him. "Oh, hell no. What is that?" Zera didn't answer. She didn't have time. The creature whirled toward her, its lips pulling back to reveal serrated teeth. It was testing her. Zira smiled. Finally, a real challenge. She lunged first. The creature reacted with inhuman speed. Zira barely dodged as razor-sharp claws sliced through the air, where her head had been just seconds before. The wind from the attack sent her hair whipping back, but she didn't hesitate. She couldn't. Her body moved on instinct. She twisted, sidestepping as the predator lashed out again, its unnatural agility making it impossible to predict. But Zira wasn't just reacting. She was learning. The humans, they were frozen in place. Daniel had drawn his pathetic little knife, holding it like a lifeline. The others, useless, staring in horror, waiting for the moment she fell, waiting to be next. Zira grinned. They had no idea what she was capable of. The creature lunged again, its claws flashing under the firelight. This time, she didn't dodge. She met it head-on. A split second before impact, she dropped low, sliding beneath its outstretched arms. The beast roared in frustration, its attack missing by mere inches. But Zira wasn't done. With a sudden burst of movement, she spun, driving her elbow into the creature's side. A metallic clang echoed as her strike landed, and for the first time, the creature stumbled. Its eyes snapped to her, flickering with something new. Recognition. Zira's grin widened. Oh, so you understand now, don't you? This wasn't a helpless, fragile alien. This wasn't some weak creature waiting to be hunted. She was the predator now. The beast recovered quickly, crouching low, its muscles tensed, preparing for its next move. But Zira was already ahead of it. She raised her arms, palms open, showing it she wasn't afraid. The fire crackled between them, casting jagged shadows over the trees. The humans barely breathed. Daniel's knuckles were white around his knife. The beast watched her. For the first time, it hesitated. And then, it spoke. A guttural, clicking language, rough and primal, yet eerily structured. Zira's eyes widened. She hadn't expected that. Daniel swore under his breath. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Zira didn't take her eyes off the creature. It's not just a predator. Daniel swallowed hard. Then what the hell is it? The beast's gaze flickered over the humans, then back to Zira. Its mouth curled into something almost like a smile. And then, in a voice rough but deliberate, it spoke in their language. You fight like one of us. The words sent a shockwave through the group. One of the humans choked on air. Daniel took an unconscious step back. Zira, she only smiled. Finally, a real opponent. The beast straightened slightly, its eyes never leaving hers. You are not like them. Zira tilted her head, studying it. Neither are you. The creature made a low, rumbling sound, almost like a laugh. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, it took a step back, and then another. Zira didn't move. Neither did it. A silent understanding passed between them. This wasn't over. Then, with a final glance at the humans, at their fragile, trembling forms, the creature vanished into the trees. Zira exhaled slowly, the adrenaline still burning in her veins. Behind her, the humans erupted. What the hell just happened? Oh my God, did that thing just karaoke? Are we going to ignore the fact that Zira literally just fought it like some kind of? Daniel's voice cut through the chaos. No. He turned to Zira, his gaze unreadable. What did it mean? Zira glanced toward the trees, where the shadows had swallowed her opponent whole. Then, without looking back, she smirked. It means, she said simply, that this is just the beginning.